The great Australian dream is now being destroyed by the politicians in Canberra, and that dream is owning your own home. Here's the boss of the ANZ Bank.
Sadly, I think home loans have become the preserve of the rich and the wealthy and the better off.
Now, owning your own home is actually a great civilising sort of thing. It's important to making young people particularly feel connected to this country, young men particularly feeling that they've got obligations and duties, and making the young committed to what makes this society work is very important. And it's not just higher interest rates that are destroying this dream, and it's not just because Australians have had the biggest fall in income in the developed world. Again, a political problem there. Joining me is Leith from Onselen, an economist who's worked for the Australian and Victorian Treasuries and is now co-founder of MacroBusiness.com.au. Leith, thank you so much for your time. What else might have made housing too expensive for the poor of Australia?
Well, it's pretty obvious, Andrew. I mean, the major driver and the reason why we've got rising house prices in the face of massive interest rate hikes is because the federal government is basically fire hosing the nation with extra people through its immigration program. So just last financial year, we added about 500,000 net overseas migrants to Australia, and data released today by the ABS, their monthly arrivals data, suggested that the September quarter is going to be even stronger. So obviously, if you're going to fire hose that many people, they're going to come into places like Sydney and Melbourne, that's going to push up house prices. And it's also obviously, lifting up rents as well, which is adding to inflation. It's causing problems there, and that's also feeding into house prices. So we've got this diabolical situation where it's a case of demand and supply. Demand is being pushed through the roof by immigration, and that's basically making housing much less affordable.
Yeah, it's not as if we had 500,000 houses just sit, well, let's say they came as couples, 250,000 homes empty, just waiting for them. I mean, it's just ridiculous. When we say, more than 500,000 in just 1 year, how does that compare to past immigration intakes?
Oh, look, mate, it is off the charts. So just to put this into perspective, in the 15 years leading up to the pandemic, we had obviously big Australia immigration. We averaged about 220,000 a year. And the highest single year we had under the previous government was 260,000. So we're currently at about 500. And if anything, the September quarter is going to be higher again. So, it is off the charts, the sort of population growth. And the problem with it is, Andrew, is it's occurring at the same time as actual dwelling construction is collapsing. So just to put this into perspective, last financial year, Australia only added 170,000 homes. That's against a population increase, so immigration plus natural increase of about 630,000. And all the forward-looking indicators, whether you look at dwelling approvals, dwelling commencements, housing construction finance, they're all at about decade lows. And just to give you one last thing in a perspective, in the year to September, we only approved 164,000 homes. So that's basically the homes that will be built. And that's about 75,000 less than the Albanese government's 1.2 million homes target, which requires 240,000 homes a year. So we're not going to be anywhere near close. So they're basically ramping up immigration to levels we've never seen before, population growth, at the same time as our actual dwelling construction is collapsing, which just means we're going to have an even deeper housing crisis going forward.
And it's also exposed by the Victorian government, among others, is punishing people with B&B properties with extra taxes, try and force them to convert them into permanent housing. I mean, there's going to be desperate measures coming up. But why then are governments so addicted to adding so many more people when survey after survey shows Australians are sick of having their cities bulging and the beaches crowded and the hospitals crowded and the public transport crowded and the roads crowded, and we've got now an infrastructure backlog, to try and cope with it. That's falling way behind and blowing its budget as well. Why then do governments keep doing this?
Well, there's basically two reasons, Andrew. So first of all, the Federal Treasury loves it because the Federal Treasury collects 80% of the tax revenues. So they effectively get all the extra personal income tax, company tax that you get from big migration. The problem is all the costs fall on the states. So the states and local governments collect about 20% of the taxes, but they're going to pay for all the infrastructure, the health, the education. Most of those costs fall on them. So it's kind of got this false, incentive system there. But the other one is all the major lobby groups have got all the money. love big migration. So big business, big property, the universities, they all love it. So they're all obviously, they hire all these economists, shonks, etc., to effectively argue the case. And they basically, lobby the governments for big migration. And that's why we get it. Yet the Australian voters hate it.